Welcome back to segment 3 or chapter 3. Today our guest is Raman, a fellow therapist, and she's going to participate in this presentation.
Thanks for inviting me, Dr. B.
Very happy to have you here. Okay. So today we're going to take a look at desires, wants, and have-tos. And it's important to make this distinction because there are so many times we're at odds with ourselves and with others when we think that we're doing things that we don't want to do or that we have to do certain things. And it can at times lead to feelings of resentment or anger or even sadness, and unnecessarily so. So we're going to take a look at this today and see if we can move things in the direction of better in terms of how we relate to ourselves and others. Okay, so we're going to begin with the definition of a desire. So, Raman, I'll ask you to just give me your definition of desire.
I consider desire maybe something that I desire and want, like maybe something I'm seeking to acquire.
Okay. Yeah, so something you seek to acquire, something that you want. And, right, in our everyday use of language, desire and want are synonyms.
Right.
But in this system, we're going to make a distinction there between the desire and want, which is very important. Important in terms of how we feel within ourselves as well as how we relate to others. Okay. So, desire in this system here involves memory of a past experience that gets projected forward in time, such that if it was a meaningful or pleasant experience, we would like to re-experience that or something like that. If it was meaningless or unpleasant or boring, our preference would be to have another experience, a different one from that, or simply to avoid re-experiencing that. Okay. So desire involves memory of past experience projected forward in time. Okay. Now, one way of looking at desires and wants is to compare it to feelings and emotions that we went through in chapter 1. So, if you're familiar with the Miller Analogies test, it involves understanding similarities and differences in things. So the basic formula for the Miller Analogies is A is to B as C is to D. So you want to see in what way are A and C alike, in what way are B and D alike, and in what way do they differ. Okay, so now we're going to use feelings and emotions as a kind of comparison or a template. So we would say a feeling is to a desire as an emotion is to a want. So let's understand what that means. So feelings and desires are similar. Feeling is the interior private experience. Nobody knows what we're feeling. We don't know what anybody else is feeling unless it gets communicated in some way, either through word or behavior or action. Similarly, a desire is the interior private experience. Nobody knows what our desires are. We don't know anybody else's desires unless they're communicated through word or through action. Okay, so that's the first way in which feelings and desires are similar. The second point of a feeling is that we don't choose feelings. Feelings happen in us and to us. Well, we can say here that we don't choose desires either. Desires happen in us and to us. Now, we do have some supportive evidence for that. If we're defining desire as memory of past experience projected forward in time, we take a look at the fact that it's memory, and do we choose our memory or do we simply remember something or we don't? And it's memory of what? Past experience. In chapter 1, we defined experience as feeling tone memory. Okay, so now that we're looking at experience, we're involving feelings, and of course, we don't choose the feelings. So here's some support for the idea that we don't choose our desires. Desires happen in us or to us. Okay. But we can choose what to do with the desire once it does come into our consciousness. We can act on it. We can set it aside. We can modify it. We can ignore it, setting it aside. So we can choose what to do with the desire. And so that's what we're going to call a want. A want is a desire that we move into action. So now we have emotion, right? Emotion is moving a feeling into action through overt communication. And a desire moving into action is what we're going to call a want. Now, some people have said, well, this is just semantics. Not really. We're going to take a look and see the practical utility of making this distinction. Okay. So, I need my prop, so I'm going to get a prop for this. I'm going to continue to talk while I'm getting my prop. I'm going to use the example of a 300-pound diabetic, somebody who loves raspberry cheesecake. You want a piece?
Yes, of course.
So here's my New York raspberry cheesecake, which I love. I have an immense desire to enjoy the pleasure of this cheesecake. I also have a desire to lose weight, bring my blood sugar level down in normal range, the desire to be healthy. So now I have these two competing desires. If I eat the cheesecake, then I would need to say, using this system, even though I had a desire to be on my health plan and be healthy, I wanted to have the pleasure of eating this cheesecake. Or conversely, I have this burning desire for the cheesecake, however, I don't want it because I want to be on my health plan. I want to be healthy. And I want the pleasure of health. So what I'm doing is I'm deferring the pleasure of the moment for the long-term pleasure of being healthy and not suffering so much. I give greater value to that than I do to the pleasure of the moment. Okay? So another example would be you're walking down the street with a friend and look in the store window and the friend says, "Oh boy, I really want that dress." And you say to the friend, "Okay, let's go in and get it." And the friend says, "Oh, no, I'm not going to spend that amount of money." Well, what they meant is they like the dress, right? This is, you're saying that want and desires are synonyms.
Right.
Another synonym for the want is like.
Mm.
So the person's really saying, "Oh, I like that dress, but I don't want to spend the money for it." See, there's a greater clarity now when we make this distinction. Right? So another example I think that helps make the point of confusing desires and wants leading to an internal state of dis-ease or distress. The example we'll use here is that somebody that goes into work in the morning comes in and says, "Boy, I really don't want to be here today. I really resent coming into work." And the coworker says, "Well, what would you rather do?" And says, "I'd rather be staying at home, lying in bed, sleeping some more." They say, "Well, go ahead. Go back home. Go lie in bed." So, no. I don't want to burden the rest of you with my work, and I need the money. I don't want the boss to be upset with me, so I'll stay. In other words, the person actually wants to be at work, even though they're giving themselves the message that they don't want to be at work. You see the confusion that's taking place here. Right? And so they're in an unnecessary internal state of distress. Going back to chapter 1, disturbing feeling. There's a story, thought in the head, argument with reality. And the basic argument here is, I'm doing what I don't want to do. Okay? Which I would say is never true. However, let's ask Raman. So, in this past week, Raman, can you think of anything that you did that you didn't want to do?
I've been in the process of filing taxes,
Mhm.
and there are a few like paperwork that I need to submit to for a person who's helping me file them, and that's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
It's
Mhm.
hard to do because it requires like, you know, just gathering a lot of different things. It's meticulous, you know. So I didn't want to do it, but I know it's helpful for me to do it in the long
Mhm.
run, you know.
Right,
So,
right. So when you say you didn't want to do it, it's very clear that there was a desire to be avoiding it or do something else.
right,
However, you chose to do it because,
because of the long-term benefit of filing taxes and to, and I like to reward myself afterwards too. And
okay,
yeah,
yeah, so you chose to do it. In other words, you wanted to do it for those reasons.
right.
So it's not true that you did something that you didn't want to do.
You're right. Yeah, I did want to do it overall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So in other words, to tell yourself you didn't want to do it is to put yourself in internal conflict, being at odds with yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally unnecessary.
Not.
And you're gonna have a disturbing feeling, which is a good thing, because the disturbing feeling tells you got a thought up here that needs adjusting to the
Right.
reality of what is.
Absolutely.
Right. So now let's expand that out, go into your whole lifetime. And you don't have to go into anything deeply personal.
I'll just spill everything that I have.
So, see if you can think of anything in your lifetime that you did that you didn't want to do. And you can go as far back as you want into childhood if you like. But really, no, anything that you didn't want to do that you did.
I had a hard time sitting in a chair at school,
Mhm.
like for long periods of time,
Mhm.
because I love to go outside and see the trees and run
Yeah.
around and feel things,
Mhm.
and not as much as like just sit in front of a whiteboard, you know,
Yeah.
for 4 hours straight, which we do in elementary school and
Yeah, okay.
you know middle school.
Yeah, so there was a desire to do that,
Yeah.
to have hands-on experience.
Right. Yeah.
And are you saying that you didn't want to sit in a...
I didn't want to
Sure.
sit in the chair. Yeah, I'd rather go feel things, you know, experience.
Okay, so what did you actually do?
I sat in the chair and
Okay,
listened.
yes. So see how you just said that you wanted to go around and feel things?
Right.
But now with this distinction we're making, you would more accurately say that you had a desire to go around and do that.
Right.
However, you wanted to stay seated in the chair because...
Because it's, you know, I'm learning something, and I also want to be a good student. If
Okay.
I'm like real, it's probably just that aspect of it.
Okay, yeah, so you did it because you thought it was in your best interest.
Mhm.
So even though it might have been more pleasurable
Mhm.
to be doing these other activities,
Mhm.
you chose to stay in the chair in order to learn and also to be a good student.
Right.
And I would say in negative terms to not get in trouble.
Not get in trouble. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of times we think we don't want to do things because it doesn't give us pleasure, or we don't think it has sufficient meaning or value. But the reality is we are always doing what we want to do, and we are never ever doing anything we don't want to do. Okay? And I can't think of any, with these definitions, I can't think of anything that I did that I didn't want to do. So that gives us kind of some sense of authority in our lives, that we're always doing what we want to do and never ever doing anything we don't want to do.
Would you say it's a series of choices? that we're
Always a
making,
series
right?
of choices, yes.
Right.
To be alive is to be faced with choices, given a series of choices. So we're gonna also add in that that there are no have-tos in life either. That we are always doing what we want to do, and there are no have-tos. So again, I'll invite you to think freshly and see if you can find anything that you think you have to do.
I know it, you know, I can reframe it, but I feel like I have to do taxes, right? Again,
Okay.
the tax thing,
Yeah.
just because it's a huge part of my life right now.
So you feel like you have
Have
to.
to.
Yeah, now notice the word feel. Whenever we use the word feel in this context, that means it's not true. Otherwise, we would say just a
I know.
flat out statement.
Okay.
So it feels like you have to do taxes, which means you don't have to do taxes. It simply feels like you have to do. So why does it feel like you have to do taxes?
To be, I don't know, like it's part of what's required to, I guess, like just be a human. So
Okay.
it's a part of like how our society works.
Okay, so it's like a requirement to participate in the society.
Yeah.
So could we say that it's a law
A law, right.
or a requirement?
Right.
However, you don't have to comply with the requirement, nor do you have to follow the law.
Right, that's true. But there are consequences to not following the law.
Yeah.
And I guess I could also reframe it. Taxes also can help, you know, if they go into good systems and
like-
giving back.
Yeah, like police, fire, park, infrastructure, yes. So you actually want to do your taxes for the positive reasons of contributing to society, which is consistent with your values.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
And you also want to do it to avoid trouble,
Mm-hmm.
to avoid the pain of being fined, punished, jailed, whatever it might
Right.
be.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't have to pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was a fellow sitting on this couch I was talking with that didn't pay taxes for 20 years. He didn't get caught. I don't know if he's caught up to this time, but
Wow.
Yeah. So there are no have-tos in life. So I invite everybody that's watching here to ask yourselves these questions. First question is, have you done anything that you really didn't want to do? And if you come up with a yes, then ask yourself, well, why did you choose to take that action? And oftentimes you'll find out that the reason that you would choose to take the action is to avoid something worse happening, worse than taking the action. So wanting to diminish conflict. But the point is that you're choosing to do that. I can remember my mother saying, well, I'm doing this just for you boys. And I remember one of the times saying, well, I wish that you wouldn't do it for me. So, you know, we have the thought that I'm doing this for you. Look at how I'm sacrificing for you. Well, no, you're wanting to do that. The important thing is to know your own motivations. You know, so we can often erroneously think that we're doing something for somebody else and it doesn't involve ourselves.
Right.
Impossible. Every action we take is rooted in what we want to do because we believe it is in our best interest. Even if you're giving $10,000 to a charity, you're doing that because you want to take an action that's consistent with your self-image, that's consistent with your values, it gives you pleasure. Is it a kind and generous thing? Yes. And is it something that you're doing for yourself as well? Yes. It's not either or. It's never either or. It cannot be either or. We cannot take an action ever that does not involve our own assessment of what will contribute to our own well-being. And that's just the way we're built. Some people would consider that selfish. And then we would have to say, well, there's two types of selfishness. There's the selfishness that involves doing something that contributes to our well-being. And if it truly does contribute to our well-being, it will automatically, if not immediately, at some point down the road, contribute to the well-being of others. For example, everything I do for myself that makes me healthy and keeps me healthy is going to benefit those around me, because then they won't have to take care of me, and I can be more present with them and fully participate with a sense of energy and equanimity. Right? So there is this kind of, quote, selfishness, which I would say is self-interest, which is positive. Because the more I take care of myself and my own needs, the greater the possibility I'm gonna be present in my environment in a way that's beneficial. The other selfishness is doing something for myself that's at somebody else's expense. I'm either violating their rights or I'm taking something away from them and giving it to myself without justification. So that's the negative selfishness. Okay. So really important to recognize that we're always doing what we want to do, never ever doing anything we don't want to do, and there are no have-tos in life. Okay. I want to give one more example, and sometimes I get dramatic in my examples, but I can't think of a better one than this. Somebody puts a gun to my head, a gun in my hand, and says, I want you to shoot that person over there. If I shoot that person over there, I can't say I had to do it, and it would be so uncomfortable but true to say I wanted to do it. Okay? So why would I think I have to? Well, because I don't want to die. Well, that's a want, isn't it? I don't have to go on living. You know, I didn't have to. I could see if I could, as long as I have a gun in my hand, I could see if I could beat the other person to the trigger. Or I could feign fainting and drop to the floor, buying some time, hoping that something would change. Or I could say, sorry, go ahead, shoot me. It was my choice. Right? So, really important to understand that we're always doing what we want to do. Another example that came is a person said, well, I got robbed down the street. Person asked for my purse, and I gave it to them. And I said, well, you wanted to give them the purse? Said, no, I didn't want to give them the purse. Well, no, you wanted to give them the purse, but why do you think you gave them the purse if you didn't want to? Well, I gave them the purse because I didn't want to get hurt. Okay, so you wanted to stay safe, yes. So you chose to give the purse in order to stay safe. You wanted to do it. Now, here's where the mistake comes in. A lot of people mistake events and situations occurring to them within the framework of wanting. No, wanting happens within the framework of choice. Right? It's not something that happens to us. It's in situations that involve choice. Another example of the have-tos that somebody came up with, well, I have to breathe. I said, no, you don't have to breathe. Well, I have to breathe to stay alive. Well, I say, well, breathing, yes, keeps you alive, but there you're not in a choice position. This is mechanics, right? The body has to breathe in order for there to be life, but some people have decided to stop breathing because they didn't want it to end their life. Or have to eat, same thing, you don't have to eat. Some people have said, well, I have to work. No, you don't have to work. What would happen if you didn't work? Well, I wouldn't have money to pay my bills. Okay, so you don't pay your bills now. Well, I don't have electricity and all this. You don't have it. Okay. Well, so what? Well, I want it. Well, there we go. You see, you work because you want the money so that you can have the benefits of that. So, we are always doing what we want to do, and there are no have-tos in life. So what does that mean? There's a very deep, profound meaning to understanding this, which is, once you see this, and you embody it, it's deeply empowering. Because then you realize you are your own authority in life. You're it. It's not the Pope, not the priest, not the rabbi, okay? Not the judge, not the manager, the boss at work. Nobody on this planet is your authority. You are it. Now, the word authority comes from the same Latin origin for the word author, which means generator of an idea, or generator of ideas. So when you realize you're always doing what you want to do, you're the one who's generating the ideas of what you believe is in your best interest. And therefore, you are your own authority in life. Now, when I mentioned this to one person, he freaked out. He said, you're promoting anarchy. If everybody thinks their own authority and there's no authority above them, you're gonna have chaos. And I said, well, I really don't think so. I think that there's something here we need to clarify. And that is that we live in a complex society, a lot of moving parts. And in order for there to be harmony, you know, we've set up rules, regulations, things to follow, so that we can function more smoothly together. And most people want to do that. They want to live according to certain rules, regulations, guidelines, and so on, in order for there to be peace and harmony. So, in order to maintain that, we have authority positions, you know, like the police or the boss or, you know, the judge. We have these authority positions. But the person in the authority position is not the authority. They are not anybody else's authority. Okay? And most people do want to follow regulations and laws in order to have harmony. So no, we're not talking about anarchy. If you remove the stoplights or the stop signs around, most people are going to be very cautious when they get to the intersections. Some people may not. In fact, that often happens here where people go right through the red lights. But most people are going to want to live a life intelligently and with a sense of order. So no, we're not talking about that. Basically what we're talking about is taking total and full responsibility for our own lives and our own actions. And it's deeply empowering once you see that you are your own authority in life. Now, I did share this with a colleague many years back, you know, and she said to me, jokingly, but with some serious part behind it, I hate you. Why do you hate me? She said, because you're telling me I'm responsible for the whole of my life. I said, you got it. You are responsible for the whole of your life. So if we take a look at the chapter 1 principle, that no word, statement, event, situation, or person ever creates a feeling in us, that it's the thoughts of the brain that produce the feeling, it's the interpretations that produce the feeling, and so therefore the world does not give us our experience. It's our interpretations of the things that happen in the world that give us our experience. And you combine that with the fact that you are always doing what you want to do, you're never ever doing anything you don't want to do, and you are your own authority in life. It is deeply, deeply empowering. And because then you realize there are no have-tos. You are doing what you want to do. And then life becomes your easel, your canvas, your palette, your paintbrush, and your paints. You can live it with a greater sense of freedom, a greater sense of joy, and perhaps even a greater amount of creativity and freshness and newness. It diminishes fear significantly. And when fear is diminished, the better parts of our being are free to flower. Okay, I don't know if you can think of anything more.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate you joining with me in this.
Yeah.
And hope this is useful. Put it into practice. Ask yourself these questions. Anytime you think that you don't want to do something and you end up choosing to do it, ask yourself why. And be aware of what we call negative motivators, which would be wanting to avoid things being worse if I don't do it. But you are still choosing to do it. Just like the woman who chose to hand over her purse to the thief. Oh, by the way, my next door neighbor, who was 70 years old, was accosted by a robber on her porch when she was going into her house. And he grabbed her bag, and she was struggling and screaming at him and saying, I'm not giving you my bag, and he took off. Anyway, so there's a good example. You don't have to give your purse, but it might be wise to. Okay. Take care. See you next time. Next time we will be talking about time, how we have become prisoners of time, and how we can free ourselves from the prison of time. Thank you.